Welcome to Niche Conversations.
Thank you so much for
I'm
having me.
yeah. I'm Jessica DeWitt, one of the editors here at the Network in Canadian History and Environment. And today I am joined by Patricia Roussel. Will you tell us about yourself?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica, for having me.
Yeah.
My name's Patricia. I'm a second year MA student in Carleton University's Public History and Curatorial Studies program.
Yeah.
I'm just finishing up the degree. This past summer, I was so fortunate to be able to be in Dawson City to conduct my community engaged research project. And my
Mm-hmm.
project really looks at how the community's public facing storytelling has evolved over the past 20 years or so to kind of grapple with the nationalized colonial narrative of
Mm.
the Klondike Gold Rush. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited to be able to talk about that work in the article that I wrote with you today. So yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be diving right into your main research today. And your
Mm-hmm.
piece was called Exhibiting Dawson Visual Narratives of the Interconnected Past. And we
Mm-hmm.
published this as part of our Visual Cultures of the Circumpolar North series. And I know Sarah and Izzy were both really excited about all the different curatorial pieces that we got this time in the series for part 5, which is wild. So yeah, let's dive into it. And I thought that we could start off by kind of the broader issue in Dawson, which is that you talk about how it is a community that has been continually reshaped by acts of commemoration. I thought maybe we could start by you explaining more by what you mean by that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have some notes here, so I might be
Yeah,
like looking at two places, but
no worries.
yeah, I think um, however you get to Dawson, whether you're driving up the North Klondike Highway, which takes about 6 hours from Whitehorse and
Yeah.
usually longer because of the road stops, or you're going in by plane, or you're going in from top of the World Highway,
Mm-hmm.
uh, there's just this feeling when you reach town of, you're stepping into the past. That's what I heard a lot of visitors say
Yeah.
when I was working at the Dawson City Museum, is they really felt like they were stepping into the past. And I think there's two kind of parts of that feeling.
Yeah.
There's, of course, like the physical characteristics of the town. Back in the late 1950s, early 60s, that's when Parks Canada really made its stamp on the town and
Yeah.
started designating buildings and historic sites that were largely linked to the Gold Rush era. And there's over 17 buildings in the Dawson Historic Complex that makes visitors feel like they're, going into this Gold Rush era town. And then there's also acts that the city has put into place through the Heritage Management Act and Heritage bylaws that make sure that the town kind of stays compatible with its historic character.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you have the dirt streets too,
Yeah.
which it is there for a number of reasons, namely like there's permafrost, so you don't want to put cement down because you'll just get really horrible roads, which is kind of renowned throughout the north. But yeah, you have these dirt streets, you have 3 museums, a cultural center, the 4 national historic sites. And this
Mm-hmm.
is just amazing for a town that has 1,700 permanent residents. Like
Yes.
it's just bustling with heritage and arts and culture.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have like Parks Canada's interpreters that are going around the town in their Gold Rush era costumes and leading visitors into these buildings that are set up in the early 1900s feel, that have like beautiful curatorial work done inside as well. So that's kind of like the physical element of the
Yeah.
town. And then, of course, there's the intangible makeup of the town too that really gives it that historic feel.
Yeah.
And that's largely the people that are employed to put these acts of commemoration in action.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the people that are like leading the the visitor experiences that are taking people into the historic buildings and having conversation with them, that really surpasses this gold rush narrative, and challenges, why is this building here? Why are we talking about these histories?
Mm-hmm.
Who's left out of these narratives?
Yeah.
Specifically, there's this really great program that leads visitors into the commissioner's residence, which was like the colonial hub of the North for a really long time. And this is where the Red Surge Red Tape program is conducted, and it's done in a dialogic interpretive manner, which
Mm-hmm.
basically is just getting people to enter conversations around, namingly like the Trondheim experience in Dawson, and how they were kind of treated by the colonial governments in a very negative way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would just say
Yeah.
that the acts of commemoration are really visible throughout town, and it's not just what you see with the naked eye, it's what you experience when you go into these places as well.
Yeah.
And the people that are so dedicated to putting these acts of commemoration into action and challenging what past commemorative
Mm-hmm.
intents were as well. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many like interesting like internal versus external like understandings of place and identity, because I know like I've never been there, and the vast majority of people, I'm guessing, only think of the gold rush when they think of Dawson, and they may
Mm-hmm.
only think of it for the entire territory, like it's that like potent of a narrative, right? That may
Absolutely.
be the only thing that people know about the entire region of the world,
Yeah.
which is so powerful and so intense.
Mm-hmm.
And like the reasons that is, and like I also thinking about, like money, like heritage is money, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
how a place like Dawson is encouraged to, stick to the past, stick to this heritage route because of, a lot has to do with money. And, other places are forced into, these future driven narratives. And anyways, it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah. So in your piece, you focus on how there was a shift in Dawson's heritage community in the 1990s. So
Yeah.
I wonder if you could describe that shift and how it, represents a broader evolution in the heritage industry in that region.
Yeah, absolutely. So this summer when I was in Dawson, I had such a privilege to be able to speak and conduct interviews with heritage professionals that have been
Mm-hmm.
working in the town for a number of years, and just the work that they've done over that time is so incredibly inspiring. And as a young heritage professional, I just look at these individuals and I'm like, wow, like if my career could be half as profound as yours, I would be a very happy woman. But nonetheless, it was an emerging theme in these interviews that uh, that the 90s was a very, very critical time for Dawson, and not just its heritage industry, but like everything. This, of course, is when the Trondheim signed their final agreement in July of 1998, and these negotiations were going on for over 25 years, and they were addressing a lot of different topics, including settlement lands, traditional territories, resource stewardship, all of these things. And when the final agreement was signed, between the Trondheim, between the federal government and the Yukon government, there were a lot of things that were put into place, giving the Trondheim full authority to manage like their internal affairs, creating laws governing their citizens according to traditional values
Mm-hmm.
and traditions. And this autonomy was also removing the First Nation from the governance structures under the Indian Act. So this was a really, really profound time for the Trondheim. And of course, this was also a time where they could now like have places to tell their own stories, and that was namely through the establishment of NiCHE Cultural Center, which also opened in 1998. I talked about that a little bit in my piece.
Yeah.
And NiCHE means long ago house, and this is like such an incredible place for visitors to this day to continue to go and learn about the histories of this region from the First Peoples.
Yeah.
And whenever I would go into NiCHE, I just got this incredibly warm and welcoming feeling. And it's a place where you're welcome to ask questions and learn. And the fact that, you know, throughout all of the historic wrongs that have been done against the Trondheim, that they continue to provide space for these questions to be asked and for people to learn, is just profound. So that was really cool in the 1990s. But thinking about the gold rush history too, like the big year that people think about when they think about the Klondike Gold Rush is 1898. The big flood of 1898 and 30,000 people coming to Dawson and trying to, strike it rich. So there was a lot of celebrations around the centennial of this year. And I would argue that it was really like all of these things really happening specifically in 1998, that there started to be questions asked about, should we really be celebrating the history of the gold rush, and what perspectives are kind of silenced a lot of the time with that as well. Yeah.
Brilliant. It just sounds like there's just a confluence of like all of these like really thick undercurrents that just come together to make this moment where there's this shift. I really enjoyed like reading about that. And I, with the UNESCO World Heritage Site and designation, and et cetera, I've been reading a bit more about the region and just kind of understanding that shift as well, like how these more recent developments are kind of coming out of that, I think. Yeah, it was just nice to learn some more backstory on that. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah, so you've hinted at it a bit, but I thought we could round out today by talking specifically about this collaborative heritage work, and maybe how you specifically employed this type of work and the values of it to the exhibit that you curated this past summer.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of tying back to what I was saying earlier about the Trondheim having this space to tell their own histories, and to really invite people into the narratives that they're sharing. This kind of extends throughout Dawson's heritage community, and to, places where visitors would go to receive the history of the region, like Parks Canada's programming, like the Dawson City Museum. So when, for instance, Red Surge Red Tape was being designed, that was done as a collaborative effort between Parks Canada and the Trondheim. And when the Dawson City Museum was doing this major restoration of their permanent exhibits, like the Trondheim were a real partner in how those exhibits were being designed and what narratives were being shared there. So they became real partners in how heritage is told and remembered and shared. So I really got the sense while working at the Dawson City Museum and working specifically under the museum's director, who was the curator of these permanent exhibits, that there's such an emphasis on weaving perspectives and narratives, and that was such a profound kind of takeaway from my time working there, was how to center the perspectives of the First Peoples while also acknowledging like the colonial narratives that surround them.
Mm.
And this is really prominent in the first exhibit that I talked about in the article that I wrote. Downstairs, it's called the Lind Gallery. And when you walk in, there's a big cube in the middle of the room. And this is centering the Trondheim perspectives and stories and histories. And when you're in this cube, you are surrounded by different quotes from Trondheim elders and citizens that are telling their own stories, surrounded by artifacts as well. And then when you step outside of the cube, that's when you receive the stories of the Klondike Gold Rush. So really, visitors are literally walking between narratives and seeing them as so interlinked, because they are. And when you go into these spaces, you're also getting the Han language. As you know, you receive the Han language as the title of these exhibits, and then in the interpretive signs, you're also getting English and French. So this is something that I really wanted to bring into my exhibit work. I was really involved in the community over the summer, and that's just how Dawson is. Like, when you live in a small town, when you live in a small place, like, every single person's hands count, and you want to get involved as much as you can. And that's exactly how I spent my summer, just, getting to meet people and learn about, oh, I came up here in the 70s and I never left. Like, that's such a common story. And it was so beautiful that people shared those stories with me. And through different events that I was involved in, or volunteering that I did, I really got a sense of how connected people are with this place and the stronghold that it has on people. And I'd be lying if I said that I didn't feel that myself when I left. But yeah, kind of going back to how that all kind of went into my curatorial work, I wanted to create a space where visitors, in between going downstairs in the Dawson City Museum, learning about Trondheim histories and Klondike Gold Rush histories, to upstairs going and learning about more community-based narratives. I wanted to create a space where visitors could go and kind of see themselves and their experiences reflected. So while talking with longtime locals, I would ask, what is it that really captured you about this place? And they would say something like, oh, the sky, and it's so alive, and it makes you feel like, constantly energized with the midnight sun. Or they would say the rivers and the confluence of the Klondike and the Yukon, and seeing how powerful the rivers are. And I really thought about all of these things and thought, I'm sure visitors feel these intense connections to these natural elements of the landscape as well. So that's why I divided my exhibit into talking about the river and the land and the sky and the town, and having each of these different showcases to present stories of each of these different places, and showcasing photographs that were in the museum's archives, just things like that I while I was meandering around, when visitors were going to the finished exhibit, I could see visitors being like, oh, we did that, or we drove up the dome and saw the midnight sun, or we saw the northern lights, or something like that. And it was so cool, because I could see that visitors were kind of getting what I wanted them to get. And as a curator, it's like, oh, it worked. But yeah, at the end of the exhibit, I had an open suitcase, and visitors could write down what they're going to take with them. And it was so interesting. Even going back to what I was talking about earlier with the physical or tangible and intangible parts of Dawson's heritage. Some people would write, oh, I bought a really big sweater and that's what I'm going to take home. Or people would write the living sky is what I'm going to take with me, or something like that. So it was really cool to see all of the things that I'd heard from the community and I'd experienced myself
Mm-hmm.
reflected in the work that I did this summer. So, um, yeah, all in all, I love Dawson. I love its community. I
Yeah.
love its histories, and I would recommend it to anyone that wants to go and have a good time, but also learn a lot of really cool stuff.
Cool. Yeah, what you're describing is such a beautiful investigation, but celebration of place, and really like a creating really deep connections between past and present, and like kind of breaking down those walls and those artificial walls that Western narratives can often solidify, right?
Hmm.
That these people that are coming to visit now are a part of the story, right? They're experiencing it, and there's people that are still there that have been there for a very long time. And it's not just, these stories of these people that rush there in the 19th century, right? So, yeah, and it's just got me thinking of I'm the president of the Saskatchewan History and Folklore Society, so I think a lot about how we tell stories of this province, and including all different narratives. And we've made a um, effort in the last 5 years or so to really decolonize our work and get other perspectives in. And sometimes there's a bit of pushback because people are afraid that when you tell, like, that they'll lose space for their stories if you start including the stories of others, and
Hmm.
that doesn't have to be. It all interconnects, and it all informs each other. And yeah, it's yeah, lots of things to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me today, Patricia. This was a really lovely conversation. I love learning about the work you're doing. Um, yeah, it's awesome. Best of luck to you
Yeah,
finishing
thank
your
you so
MA.
much. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you so
sure.
much for the opportunity to yap about a place that I really love. I
Mm,
always, I love talking about my work. So I really appreciate the platform to do so. And, all of NiCHE's amazing work. Thank you so much for all of your efforts there, and know that it's really appreciated. So yeah,
thank
thank you so
you.
much, Jessica.
Okay. Take care,
Uh,
Patricia. Happy
you
holidays.
too. Happy
Bye.
holidays. Bye.